All right, hello and welcome. Today, we are absolutely tackling a big one, philosophy. You know, those huge questions, how did the universe even begin? What is truth, really? And how in the world are we supposed to live good lives? For thousands of years, these are the kinds of questions we've been wrestling with. And philosophy, well, that's the engine driving that entire search. So let's just start right at the beginning. What do you think philosophy is?
Seriously, when you hear that word philosophy, what's the first image that pops into your head? Just take a second. Because for a lot of us, it probably conjures up some pretty specific and, let's be honest, maybe even intimidating ideas.
Right? Are you picturing these dusty, impossible-to-read books? Or maybe questions that have absolutely no answers? How about a bunch of bearded guys in togas arguing about things that have zero to do with your actual everyday life? Yeah, these are the stereotypes, and they can make the whole subject feel totally out of reach.
But what if all of that is just wrong? Plato, one of the most famous thinkers in all of history, I think he said it best. Philosophy doesn't start with some heavy textbook. It starts with wonder. That moment you look up at the night sky and just feel small, or when you suddenly question a belief you've held your entire life. That is the beginning of philosophy. It's totally a natural human thing.
So, let's just clear away all those stereotypes for a minute and take a look at what philosophy actually is. I promise it's way more dynamic and relevant than you might think.
And this right here, this kind of reframes the entire goal. See, the point isn't to find some single book that has all the right answers. The real value is in the process, that journey of asking questions, using reason, and debating ideas. It's really about learning how to think, not just being told what to think.
And you know what? That process, it actually has a structure. Philosophers have kind of broken down this whole art of asking why into a few key areas. So let's dive in.
Okay, first up, we've got metaphysics. This is the really big picture stuff. It tackles the most massive questions about what's actually real and what it even means for something or someone to exist in the first place.
I mean, a question like this just shows you how deep this goes. It's not something science can just cook up an answer for in a lab. It's about the very foundation of reality itself. A total classic puzzle for philosophers.
So, if metaphysics asks, what is real? Our next branch, epistemology, comes along and asks, yeah, but how do we know what's real? This is basically the theory of knowledge, what it is, where we get it, and how much we can actually trust it.
And this is a question that gets personal, and it gets personal fast. How can you be so sure that what you're seeing right now, or what you've learned in school, or even what you remember from yesterday is actually true? Epistemology really challenges us to look hard at the foundation of our own certainty.
And finally, this is where philosophy gets super practical. You've got ethics and political philosophy. They take all that abstract thinking about reality and knowledge and basically ask, okay, so what do we do now? How should we treat each other? What does a fair society even look like? These questions literally shape our laws, our values, and our day-to-day decisions.
Now, seeing how different thinkers have tried to answer these questions, that's where things get really fun. Philosophy is just this huge, ongoing conversation. So let's take a quick whirlwind tour through just a few of the big ideas that have shaped everything. Okay, this is a perfect example of philosophy in action. You have Plato, who argued that this physical world we see is just a shadow of some higher, perfect reality. But then his own student, Aristotle, comes along and says, no way, truth comes from observing the real world right here in front of us. That one disagreement between a teacher and a student kicked off centuries of debate. Now, let's fast forward almost 2,000 years. A philosopher named René Descartes was wrestling with this radical doubt about everything, and he came to one foundational truth. The very act of him doubting his own existence proved that he, as a thinking thing, had to exist. That one powerful idea became a cornerstone for so much of modern philosophy.
And from these big, core ideas, you see thought just branching out in a million different directions. Descartes' focus on his own mind, on the individual, kind of turned philosophy inward. But what happened when it turned back to the outside world?
Well, around the same time as Descartes, you have Francis Bacon, who had a totally different take. He argued that knowledge isn't just for sitting around and thinking about. It should be used to make life better. He saw it as this practical, powerful tool for human progress. And that shift, well, it helped lay the groundwork for the entire scientific revolution. So the crucial thing to get here is that philosophy isn't about escaping the world. It's actually about engaging with it on a much deeper level. It's about turning a magnifying glass on our beliefs, on our societies, and yeah, on ourselves.
And sometimes, looking that closely can reveal some pretty uncomfortable truths. I mean, Machiavelli's brutally pragmatic advice to rulers, it brings up these timeless ethical dilemmas. Is it okay to do a bad thing to get a good result? This is something we are still fiercely debating today, in politics, in business, in our own lives.
So, we've got all these big, often conflicting ideas from all these thinkers throughout history. But why do they still matter? What's the actual real-world impact of all this thinking? Well, the impact is it's enormous, and it's literally everywhere. The scientific method we rely on, it's built on a philosophical foundation of logic and observation. The very idea of human rights, that came from philosophical arguments about natural law and the worth of an individual. And today, right now, when we're debating the ethics of artificial intelligence, we are using the exact same logical tools that philosophers developed centuries ago.
Which brings us all the way from the grand scale of history right back down to you, here, now. Because ultimately, philosophy isn't just about what Plato or Descartes believed, it's about what you believe.
Socrates, the philosopher who famously said the only thing he knew was that he knew nothing, left us all with this incredibly powerful challenge. He basically believed that a life lived on autopilot, without ever stopping to question our own beliefs and our own values, isn't a life that's been fully lived.
And really, that's the final question this whole thing leaves you with. Are you just accepting the ideas you've been handed down, or are you actively taking part in that timeless human process of wonder and reason? Is your life an examined one?